I'm going to tell you 3 stories. All 3 stories will fit within the span of 10 minutes. At the end of the 3 stories, I'm going to wrap them together with a common thread, and then we're going to open it up for questions and answers. So 3 stories, 10 minutes. That's our plan. Let's execute. Story number 1. That's a tractor. And that tractor is made by a tractor manufacturer. That tractor manufacturer was very successful. Sold a lot of tractors. And the tractor maker did what a lot of successful young men do. He bought a Ferrari sports car. And he enjoyed driving Ferrari sports cars. Had a good time with them. One day, this tractor manufacturer, who had become wealthy from selling tractors, his Ferrari broke down. The clutch wasn't working, so he got out of his Ferrari. He crawled underneath it. He looked underneath the hood and he said, you know what? The clutch in this Ferrari is the same as the clutch that I use in my tractors. So he called up Mr. Ferrari. He said, Mr. Ferrari, the clutch in your Ferrari is the same clutch that I use in my tractors. You can do better than that. Oh, and by the way, you can have better brakes, Mr. Ferrari. And Mr. Ferrari, you can have better steering. And Mr. Ferrari listened to this tractor manufacturer for a while and he said, you know what? I'm Mr. Ferrari. I make sports cars. You make tractors. Take your behind back to your tractor factory and you keep making your tractors. And the tractor manufacturer got upset by that. He said, you know what? I was trying to help this guy out and you wouldn't listen to him. So the tractor manufacturer decided, you know what? I'm going to make my own sports cars. And today, there are people who say that this tractor maker's sports cars are as good as or maybe even better than Ferraris. That tractor maker's name is Lamborghini. And these are the cars that Mr. Lamborghini makes. That's story number 1. Story number 2, that's a camel. And a long time ago, there was a very wealthy man with many camels and many crops on his land and much gold. And he had 17 camels. 17 camels, 3 sons, a lot of gold, a lot of land, a lot of wealth. And the wealthy man died. And when the wealthy man died, he stipulated in his will that his 17 camels would be divided amongst his 3 sons this way. To the oldest son, 1/2 of the camels. To the middle son, 1/3 of the camels. And to the youngest son, 1/9 of the camels. Well, you see the problem. 17 camels. You do the maths. 1/2 of 17 is 8.5. 1/3 of 17 is 5 point something something. 1/9 of 17 is 1 point. How do you split up a camel? That's a problem, right? So the 3 sons were about to argue about their father's will and fight with each other over this. And then they decided, rather than argue with each other, let's go to the wisest person in our village and have this wise person resolve our dispute. The wisest person in the village happened to be a woman, an older woman who had raised sons, you know, a mother, a grandmother, who had dealt with teenage sons. Some of the women in this room know something about that, right? So they went to the older woman and said, oh, older woman, give us your wisdom, help us out. How do we resolve this dilemma? And the older woman said, she thought about it for a moment, and she said, here, take one of my camels. So instead of 17 camels, they had 18 camels. The 3 sons said, that's crazy. We came here for you to resolve a dispute. Then they thought about it further, and they realized, well, now we have 18 camels, and 18, half of 18 is 9. 1/3 of 18 is 6. And 1/9 of 18 is 2. Wow, that works out really well. But it's even better. 9 plus 6 plus 2 is 17. They still had a camel left over. They gave that camel back to the older woman along with some gold for giving them her wisdom. That was story number 2. Story number 3. Long time ago, there was a manufacturer who owned a widget machine. He made widgets. And inside of his widget factory, he had a widget machine. The widget machine made widgets, and then he would sell the widgets. People would give him money, and that's how he made money that way. And he became very wealthy as a result. The widget machine made the widgets. He would sell the widgets. People would pay him for the widgets, and that's how he made money. Widget machine makes a widget, sell the widget, get paid for the widget, he makes money. Did very well over the years. One day, the widget machine broke down. Oh no, yeah, right, oh no. So the widget machine broke down, and so the man called together all of his employees. They crawled around the widget machine, and they said, we gotta fix this widget machine, because if the widget machine doesn't make widgets, we can't sell the widgets and make money. They couldn't figure out, the employees did. Finally, the owner of the factory said, you know what, I need to call in an expert, a consultant. The widget maker called in a consultant, an expert, somebody who knows something about widget machines. And the consultant came in, and the widget maker described the problem to the consultant. The consultant walked over to the machine, and he looked at the machine. He spent about 15 minutes with the machine, crawled up and over and around it about 15 minutes, and then the consultant pulled from his pocket a piece of chalk. And the consultant walked, it was a big machine, walked over to the machine, marked right here on this big machine with the chalk, and marked right here on his big machine with the chalk. And then he turned to the owner of the widget machine and he said, I want you to get your employees and cut right here on this chalk mark, and cut right here on this chalk mark. Remove all of the metal between the two chalk marks, and your widget machine will work again. And the widget machine owner said, that's what? You were here for 15 minutes and you marked some chalk on here, but you know, we tried everything else. All right, let's try it. So the employees cut right here on this chalk mark, and they cut right there on that chalk mark. Remove the metal between the two chalk marks, flick the on switch on the machine, and it worked. The widget machine was working again. The widget machine made the widgets, they could sell the widgets, they could get paid for the widgets, and they were back in business. And the widget maker, or the widget factory owner was happy again. They were making money again, and the widget factory owner turned to the consultant. He said, that's great, you fixed the widget machine. How much do I owe you? The consultant said, $10,000. And the manufacturer said, $10,000, man, you were here for 15 minutes. You crawled around the machine for 15 minutes. You marked on it with a piece of chalk or something. You expect me to pay you $10,000 for 15 minutes of work? You're going to have to give me some type of itemized invoice or something to tell me why I should pay you $10,000 for 15 minutes of work. So the consultant pulled from his pocket piece of paper, wrote up an invoice, a list of what he had done, and handed it to the manufacturer of widgets. And the owner of the widget factory looked at the invoice, looked it up and down, nodded his head, and he paid the consultant $10,000. Paid invoice. What was on the invoice? What was on that invoice? I can read it to you now in my imagination. I have an imaginary copy of that invoice in front of me right now, and I'm going to read to you what was on that invoice. First line of the invoice. Piece of chalk, $1. Knowing what to do with the chalk, $9,999. Okay, those are the three stories. Here's the common thread. Some might argue there are two common threads, or maybe one common thread with two names, however you want to specify it. Common threads: specialized knowledge and the courage to execute. In each case, you have somebody, in each story, you have somebody who has specialized knowledge and the courage to execute on that knowledge. In the case of the tractor maker did not know how to make sports cars, but the tractor maker understood steel and engines, and more important than any of that, that tractor maker knew how to bring people together to accomplish a goal. And when he needed to hire engineers who understood sports cars, he was able to do it because he knew how to do that from building his tractors. And that is why we have Lamborghini sports cars today, because Mr. Ferrari pissed off Mr. Lamborghini. In the case of the second story, the old woman, the wise old woman in the village, had specialized knowledge of mathematics She knew that 17 plus 1 is 18, right? And she had specialized knowledge of human nature. Those three sons who were about to argue with each other and fight with each other over those camels. So she knew that she could tell them what was going on. She had the courage to execute on that knowledge by telling them what to do, right? And in the case of the third story, that consultant had specialized knowledge of widget machines. And he had the courage to execute in a couple of ways. One, he had the courage to get up on the machine and draw on it with the chalk and tell the widget manufacturing company owner, cut here, cut here, cut here, all that jazz. And he had the courage to ask for his $10,000 fee for 15 minutes of work. All right, my 10 minutes are up. Those are the three stories. Thank you for your time.